data. I don't have the training and education background. I'm just an old Air Force test pilot who's picked up a cause that keeps me out of the pool halls on most days, and so I've been working in this space probably about 12 years now. Started with just looking at the Anchorage School District and then expand my reach. And because I have the ability as an airline pilot too to travel and things like that, I attend a lot of conferences and started really getting kind of obsessed with the fact that in Alaska we have a very, very expensive education system. Our average brick and mortar kid, we invest about $22,000 a year in those kids, and we've gotten some of the worst outcomes. And up until recently, we started to bend the curve in the last few years. But up until recently, we got some of the worst student outcomes in the United States, and that's the thing that really keeps me awake at night and keeps me working hard in this space.
Well, and we appreciate your hard work, and we're going to be talking about some of that stuff because we have, we being me and the royal we here on the program have been beating the heck out of the education system over some of those numbers. But you do have some good news for us, which I think is refreshing on the education front. But you also are going to help us demystify and bring some truths, some hard truths to the system here. First and foremost. So I do want to talk a little bit about those rankings because, one of the things that we've been talking about on the program is how we've done so poorly in the scholastic achievements, the nation's report card, the NAEP scores, things like that. We've talked repeatedly about how 4th and 8th grade students in the state of Alaska have been at the bottom of the heap, 49th, 50th out of 50 or 51, if you count the District of Columbia, that, we've had a pretty rough time. But you do have some good news for us, Bob, because you've been following this and watching this a long time with analysis. And so you're talking now about how we've actually, over just the last 4 or 5 years, seen some improvements on some of these things. So I guess we'll start off there. Let's talk about the rankings for Alaska students and where those have gone in just the last few years.
Yeah, sure. And Alaska was actually compelled first to start NAEP testing. We were one of the states that didn't participate in NAEP, and that's the National Assessment of Education Progress conducted by the U.S. Department of Education every other year. And in 2003, it was the first year that we were compelled to, because of No Child Left Behind, that all states had to participate in NAEP. And NAEP is, a pretty blunt measurement. It only measures 4th grade and 8th grade reading and math. They take other measurements, but those are the only ones that Alaska is required to participate in, and that's the only ones we do participate in. But it has a really good. They take a very large statistical sample, and you get a really good indication over a longitudinal period of time of how well students are doing. Well, we were not doing very well when we first started joining NAEP in 2003, but actually we trended quite a bit lower over the years between the 2003 and 2019. We were 2019. By 2019, we were and I personally divide the NAEP test scores up by kids who qualify and don't qualify for free or reduced lunch, because it's really the only way to apples compare different states, because we can't really compare ourselves to Mississippi, where 80% of the kids are in poverty, and in Alaska, where we're one of the lowest poverty rate states in the United States. So when we divide those up, in 2019, we were dead last in a bunch of categories, specifically free and reduced lunch reading for 4th grade and free or reduced lunch math. We were but over between 2019 and 2022, normally it's a 2-year cycle, but we had to skip a year because of COVID, is the first time that we've seen of the 8 main categories that I track. 5 of the 8 main categories are national rankings improved, and we had some of the very lowest learning loss over COVID. And a lot of that is coming in as a result of the focus that the state board and the commissioner and the state in general has had on education. I think we've really reinforced the narrative. I think that we're not doing well, and people really didn't know that. It wasn't a hot topic issue until we started talking about those.
Right.
And our recent improvements are something. We still have a long ways to go. We're still near the bottom in almost every category. But the fact that for the first time in 20 years we're turning the ship around a little bit is very, very encouraging.
So from 2003 to 2019, we were actually declining and dropping in the categories, is what you're saying. And then at 2019 to 2022, we've actually come up. Now, before we get into the actual numbers, you just said that you and I've seen your I've seen your chart where you talk about free or reduced lunch or non-free or reduced lunch. Now, why did you said you wanted to break that out to an apples to apples comparison? Is that simply to break us out against states who don't have a free lunch program or who have so many kids that are in poverty that they are required to have that? Is that why you broke that out that way?
No, that's broken out specifically because it's pretty well documented that kids who are low-income kids, and the really only differentiator we have between those groups of low-income and upper-middle-income kids is whether or not they qualify for free or reduced lunch. And there's a lot of states that there are a lot more kids that qualify for free or reduced lunch. And when we compare them, like if we were to compare without that qualifier, Mississippi and Alaska, Alaska actually stands up there. We're pretty close to Mississippi, but Mississippi, 80% of the kids are on free or reduced lunch. And when you break it down by kids who are on free or reduced lunch and non-free or reduced lunch, Mississippi, who adopted the legislation similar to the Alaska Reads Act back in 2014, they're now second in the nation in low-income fourth grade reading, behind Florida, which adopted legislation similar to the Alaska Reads Act back in 2003. Without that differentiator, you're not really comparing the groups as accularly,
right.
and it leads us to believe that we're doing better than we are, right, when in fact one of the trouble spots for Alaska for a long time has actually been the outcomes for upper middle income kids, the kids who don't qualify for free or reduced lunch. When we go into the tables and break those out, those are areas where we're actually one of the weakest in the nation.
So where we were in 2019 was that we were 50th or 51st on math and reading for free and reduced lunch, and 49th and 51st on reading and math for non-free or reduced lunch. But we've increased it. We went up 48th out of 50th on math, and we went up 50th out of 51st, which is not a huge deal on fourth grade. But when you get into the eighth grade, we slipped down on the reading for eighth grade with free or reduced math, but on the other ones, we jumped up 4, 5, 6 positions on those. So it was a pretty significant jump overall.
Right, and the other story on we're still dead last in low income free or reduced lunch, but and NAEP test score is about a 10 point score is roughly a school or a whole school year in achievement. And the 51st in free or reduced lunch, we were 10 points behind the second worst state in the United States in 2019. And now in 2022, we were only 1 point. So our kids were not only dead last, our low income fourth grade reading kids were not only dead last, they were dead last by an entire school year. But
right.
we're closing that gap, and I'm really excited. Looking forward to, I've always dreaded Novembers and even years, when the NAEP test scores come out. Oh, here we go again. We're gonna
Right.
we're gonna go lower, but I'm pretty excited about this November when the kids take the NAEP in the spring and the results come out in November. I think we're going to see some really big jumps, and that's based upon things that we were doing in the Alaska Reads Act. Strangely enough, before the Alaska Reads Act, we were never measuring kids' reading ability until they were third graders, and by about that time, if you're measuring that, it's almost too late
Right.
to intervene. If you don't learn to read by 9, the chances of you keeping up with your rest of your cohorts are. But in the Alaska Reads Act, now we measure all kids 3 times a year, starting in kindergarten, and those beginning of the year and mid-year measurements that we've taken already are very, very encouraging, that we're bending the curve. And I'm excited. I think that in November, we're going to see some really good improvements in our NAEP test scores.
So I guess the bad news here is that I can no longer beat up on the education establishment that we're the lowest of the low in some of these, although we still are 51st out of 51 for reading on free or reduced lunch as well. But we can see some improvements. And that is some good stuff. We'll continue this discussion. Bob Griffin is our guest. We're talking about education here in the state of Alaska. Bob is a member of the State Board of Education and Early Development and is up for reappointment this morning at 8 a.m. If you'd like to go listen to that, now's the time to put that in your browser and get things ready. We're going to continue here in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return with more right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, Bob Griffin is our guest. Senator Rob Myers says, "You mean we went up before a BSA increase?" Yes, we did. And David asked a question, but I think we've answered that here with the scores and the things that we just talked about. He said, how has Alaska done in 4th grade reading since 2002? And I think Bob did lay that out, that we declined up until 2019, and now we're starting to see a rebound with a focus on read by 9 and all that kind of stuff. So I think that one has pretty much been covered so far. Bob, what has been your biggest achievement here since you've been already been on DEED for 4 or 5 years? What do you figure has been your biggest achievement, while being on the board over these last few years that you'd point back to say, this is a great thing that we did? What is your thought on that?
Well, I think the biggest part is the chair of the reading committee is the fact that we lobbied for and got the Alaska Reads Act passed. It's something I was personally invested in and had introduced by lawmakers in the legislature every year since 2014, and so it's a cause that I've been supporting. It's based upon a law that was passed in Florida back in 2003, and Florida for the last 6 or 7 NAEP cycles has been the number 1 school system in the United States for reading ability. Kids that are and especially the free or reduced lunch category kids, which is the main focus. The kids that are not free or reduced lunch, most of them are actually going to be probably okay. It's the low income kids that have struggled in the country, and Florida has led the nation in that category. And that increase in literacy has impacted things like, because if you there's an old adage in education, you got to first through 3rd grade you learn to read, so from 4th through 12th grade you can read to learn. And when when you're functionally illiterate, you don't progress very well, and you end up kind of covering your illiteracy with manifesting in behaviors we don't like. So learning to read is, if there's a more important path in a K-12 system, I'm not really aware of it. And the fact that we're starting to turn that ship around as chair of the reading committee, I'm very proud of that. But also currently the chair and the longest standing member of the Tribal Compacting Committee too, for the State Board of Education. And we're really looking forward to that program taking off. We've had some enabling legislation last year for a demonstration project for 5 tribes to demonstrate what tribal compacting and education might be, and to kind of duplicate the great success we've had with tribal compacting in the Native healthcare system. So kind of excited at those opportunities, because we do have some struggles with the outcomes in our Native communities. And a lot of that has to do with that not all those people are particularly invested in having a westernized education. So we're trying to focus on an opportunity to achieve the same type of things, but with a little bit more of a Native focus on Native ways of knowing things.
It's interesting to see, when we talk about coming up almost 10 points between 2017 and 2019, and that's a good thing between 2019 and 2022. But some of that is also, even though, I mean, our numbers have remained, basically steady in that category of free or reduced lunch. And some of that is because of the loss in other places, right? We got about 30 seconds.
Yeah, no, that are, the increases have been slow and steady. But if you look on that chart that I sent you, when you look where Mississippi and Florida added those new programs, their outcomes really shot up. And I think,
going from 45 to number 2 in that time period pretty much shows that there's something different that's working there. All right, we're going to jump back into this with Bob Griffin, the Michael Duke Show. Please like and share, like and follow, subscribe, ring the bell, do all this stuff that we need to do. Let's get back to it. Here we go, right now.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Yeah, I guess. A little intellect there somewhere. We're going to jump into this here, back with Bob Griffin right now, member of the state's Board of Education and Early Development. We've been talking about the improvements, and we have seen some good improvements, dropping from 49th to 42nd in reading for 8th graders, from 45th to 42nd in math for 8th graders. Those are both good, not quite as good increases on the 4th grade side, but still doing better. So there is some movement in that direction, and a lot of it, I think, has to do with comprehension and things like that. But let's talk a little bit about some of the other things. One of the things that we've been talking about here the last couple of days, of course, is from this court ruling. Adolph Zeman, the judge who basically ruled the entire correspondence program unconstitutional, which is a little tough considering it's been in place for decades. It's really just the last part in 2014 that was put into place that I think that's creating the problems. But he did a clean sweep, and that's going to create some issues because many Alaska parents have decided that brick and mortar school was not for them. And whether that was because of a philosophical difference, whether it was because they didn't have busing or whatever, there are a lot of kids who are not choosing basically their neighborhood schools now, right, Bob?
Yeah, and it's almost 1 in 3 kids in Alaska are not in brick and mortar neighborhood schools, between charter schools, between correspondence allotment programs, and this correspondence allotment ruling affected the biggest portion of that. A little over 17% of kids in Alaska are in correspondence allotment programs. That's the largest number of that type of program in the nation. But we have as well as charter schools, private schools, and alternative schools. Almost 1/3 of our parents have decided that the easiest thing to do is to stick your kid out at a bus stop and come back 6.5 hours later and pick them up, and because you have faith that your kid is going to get a decent education in your local neighborhood schools. But there's almost 1/3 of our parents that easy thing to do is not good enough for their kids. So that's it seems to be a real lack of curiosity on a lot of the education industry on why they're seeing such a general evacuation of the neighborhood schools, and it's something that we're really trying to get to the bottom of, because I just wanted to circle back to Senator Myers there too. That he's absolutely right. This time frame where we're actually seeing results turn around a little bit is one of the time frames that have been criticized for having flat BSA funding, and the funding has not been going up that much. But when we get into the actual numbers of students in schools and the amount we've spent over the years, we've actually had about a 91% increase in per student spending between 2003 and 2023. It's been flatter lately, but inflation in Alaska was only 60% during that time frame. So we've had a 30-point increase in per student spending over the rate of inflation over the last 20 years, and the actual increase is actually much higher than 91%, because when you take into account that we've had a quadrupling of kids in correspondence courses. And the correspondence course, when we spend about $22,000 a year per student in brick and mortar programs, the state spends $5,364 per student in correspondence courses. Some of the folks that are getting their correspondence allotments might be shocked by that, because most of them are only getting $2,500, and the people running the correspondence programs are keeping the rest of that money. But they're actually, in many cases, happy to have it, and they're producing amazing outcomes for $2,500 a year when we're spending $22,000 a year per student in other programs.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was the shocking thing. I know that we had Sarah Montalbano from the Policy Forum on talking about just the base increase over 20 years was going upwards of almost 30%. But you looked at it, the funding has increased with the state formula, even with a decrease in students, about a 5,000 student decrease over the 2003 to 2023 time. We saw the funding increase from $643 million to almost $1.2 billion in that same 20-year period. So this idea that somehow education is being underfunded or has been flat funded, when you actually look at the numbers, it doesn't seem like that necessarily holds true. We have been spending more.
Oh yeah, we've absolutely been spending more, and that's been recognized in the Rutgers study that came out recently. That Rutgers rated us as the second most adequately funded education system in the United States, just slightly behind Wyoming, and they adjudicate that based upon the effort, the amount of our state domestic product that we dedicate to K-12 education. And ironically, Florida, I've been talking up Florida. Ironically, in the Rutgers study, Florida was ranked dead last in the nation for and adjudicated as being the least most adequately funded K-12 system in the United States. Yet they're in of the 8 NAEP categories that I track, they're in the top 10, and 5 of them number 1 in low-income 4th grade reading and low-income 4th grade math. So that's and on top of that, I think the latest metric I've been using to judge the quality of an education system is tracking how many kids graduate with an advanced placement test, pass with a 3 or higher. Well, Florida, for being the most poorly funded, most inadequately funded K-12 system in the United States, is 3rd in the nation for the number of kids who leave with at least one AP test at 3 or higher, at 29%. Alaska, we're still struggling in that category. We're 45th in the nation with only 12% of our kids achieving a 3 or higher on an AP test.
So would you say really that this is correlation and causation, right? This is causality. People are saying, well, more money equals a better education, but what you're saying is essentially the numbers don't necessarily prove that out. And some of this has to do with allocation. How is the money being spent? You pointed out the fact that correspondence students receive a fraction of what brick and mortar students get from the funding formula. They receive about $5,300 compared to students in brick and mortar schools who receive about $13,000 with all the different formula multipliers and modifiers applied. So they're getting twice as much, but they're not doing nearly as well. So it's not necessarily, I guess it would be safe to say, and you can say if I'm wrong or not here, but this is safe to say that it's not necessarily a money issue as much as it seems to be a process or a curriculum, an issue of how you're teaching the kids, not how much money you have to teach the kids. Am I right about that?
And I think you are. It's where we allocate our resources. Way too much of our K-12 dollars are intercepted by buildings and bureaucracies, and especially the buildings. I've been harping on that for a long time now, and it triggered I voted against the capital projects when they came up to the state board to refer them to the legislature, because in the 5 years on the board, I've seen this massive acceleration in the cost of projects that it's on the almost completely bizarre that nobody seems to be at the helm watching this at all. But we had a project come up for a village school and among other projects, but this one in particular, we started digging into the numbers. That $102 million to replace a building in one of the village schools, and I think all these village schools should have excellent facilities. But when you start digging into it, it was $600,000 per student that we were investing in that facility, and was going to cost us about $18,000 a year per student to maintain. Now, those are all resources that will no longer be available for classroom operations for those and for those kids operating out there, and that anybody with a little bit of common sense can see when the escalation or the inflation rate for building projects is much higher than the rate of inflation. That if you're consistently 6% higher than the rate of inflation, then every 10 years, the cost in real dollars is going to double. So we're allocating way too much of our resources into buildings that don't produce the better outcomes. That particular building for $102 million, that's $2,600 a square foot. And sorry for going off on super walk on that, but that's $3.5 million for a kindergarten classroom in that school. And that's the exact figure that Winterberry Charter School in Anchorage built their entire campus, K-8 campus, for 260 kids from an undeveloped site because they don't get any facility support. So it's the contrast is really, really stark when you focus on programs like our charter schools do. You don't waste a ton of money on facilities that robs resources from classroom operations.
Right. And you talk about the $105 million, building in the bush, but it also happens right here in the urban areas. In Anchorage, they spent several $1 million on a school to build a brand new school when they already had about 10,000 empty student spaces. 26,000 students. They have room for that when they have less than, or will have less than 15,000 students by 2028. And yet they're going to build a brand new building when they have 10,000 empty student spaces. I mean, that kind of stuff makes no sense, I guess, unless you're working for a construction company.
Well, and that facility, Inlet View Elementary School, is going to be close to $1,000 per square foot to replace a school. And you say, when we have a ton of excess capacity, and we have $1 billion in Anchorage, $1 billion in deferred maintenance, and we spent roughly $50 million when you combine the COVID money that was put in and the bond money and the planning money that has already been paid. It's about $50 million to double the size of an elementary school when we already have an enormous excess capacity of elementary school floor space in Anchorage.
One of the other things that I want to talk about, but we're coming up on the break, I do want to talk about chronic absenteeism, which has become a real problem nationwide since COVID. And also we want to discuss the whole charter school situation with you as well. Bob Griffin is our guest. He's a member of the State Board of Education and Early Development and is coming up for reappointment and confirmation this morning at 8 a.m. So we'll be seeing how that goes. Bob's given us the rundown here and his thoughts on what's going on in the education system. We will continue with more right after this. Don't go anywhere.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, Bob Griffin is our guest. I mean, that was the number that really blew me away, Bob, was the fact that they had in Anchorage specifically, they have thousands of empty student seats, and yet they've decided to spend, well, as you just said, $50 million expanding a school where they didn't need those student seats anyway. So we're going to spend $50 million because what's the capacity of that school? 500 students. We're going to add another 500. And what's going on? They're going to tear down the other building. They spent $50 million, but they've got thousands of empty student seats in other buildings for K through 8 or whatever it is. I mean, it's kind of just, it approaches the idea that that's kind of ludicrous. We're just throwing money essentially away, money that could be used inside the classroom.
Right. No, and if you look at in actuality, we did an analysis policy forum a little while back that we're spending somewhere $40-60 million a year maintaining excess floor space beyond the capacity for the kids that we have, and the enrollment has been declining, and the projections are for the enrollment to continue to decline. But if you think of $60 million a year, that's 500 teacher salaries that offsets that we're not we there's 500 teachers that we can't hire because of money that we're misallocating into buildings we don't need. So that the physical plan of the Anchorage School District is going to correct itself here eventually. Whether it happens in an organized fashion or a disorganized fashion is really the only thing that remains to be seen as far as that goes.
Yeah, no, and it's frustrating. I mean, I talk about Nordale School in Fairbanks, where we had a school that was being torn down that we still owed bonds on. We still had 10 years worth of bond payments on a building that they decided to tear down and then build a whole new building for like $24 million or something. That was 15, 20 years ago already. But this is a constant problem going back and forth on this.
No, and it will continue to be a problem until we try and figure out cheaper, faster, better ways to build our schools, because I've talked to a lot of real estate professionals. There's nobody building $1,000 per square foot office buildings. Just for some context, that $102 million for the village school is twice as expensive as the new Alaska Airlines hangar out at Ted Stevens Airport. So that was a $50 million commercial project, one of the biggest commercial projects that's gone in Anchorage in a long time. And if you've ever been inside, it's a pretty fancy building with the huge doors that can put several 737s inside, and that school for 150 kids out in the villages is going to cost twice as much as that. So. And again, I think those kids in the villages should have great facilities. It's just that there's nobody building private sector facilities that are anywhere near that cost. And again, I can't say it enough. it robs
$2,100 a square foot, right? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. You mentioned a private campus. One of the charter schools has a private campus that they build the whole campus for $3 million for almost 300 kids. Is that it? Is that right?
Yeah, that's a Winterberry Charter School, and they have a huge waiting list of people who want to be involved in that program. It's the Waldorf delivery model, and I've been to the campus several times. It survived the 2018 earthquake just fine, and the parents are super happy with the facility. The other one, the highest performing school in the state of Alaska, is the Eagle Academy Charter School out in Eagle River, and it operates out of the old Automax used car lot that was a roller rink before that. The facilities are the kind of the bane of my existence right now. It's again robbing resources from classroom operations, which could much better be utilized to hire more and better teachers.
Right. That's what kills me. And especially, that's what kind of killed me in the BSA argument is everybody's like, oh, it's for the children, it's for the children, it's for the children. But there's no guarantee that any of those dollars are actually going to make it down into the classroom. Used to be a discussion about having 70% of that make it down to the classroom, or even, and you're having a hard time at this point making sure that even 50% of it actually makes it into the classroom. It's all getting sucked up by overhead and administration, et cetera.
Well, that's just it. If you do the math there, it's every group of 25 kids in brick and mortar neighborhood schools, we're spending about $600,000 a year. There's really that classroom teacher in front of those 25 kids, and the supplies and everything that they get. The curriculum is not any significant portion of that $600,000.
Bob Griffin is our guest, again, member of the State Board of Education and Early Development. He's been on the board for 5 years, and now he's been reappointed with confirmation happening this morning at 8 a.m. Fingers crossed that Bob gets across the finish line here this morning. We'll see what kind of hatred and discontent can be spewed out during the meetings today. We'll continue with Bob right now. The Michael Dukes Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
The Michael Dukes Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
All right, Bob Griffin is our guest. Final segment for this hour. Bob is a member of DEED, the State Board of Education and Early Development. He's been on the board for about 5 years and has been reappointed by the governor, and confirmation will take place this morning at 8 a.m. And so hopefully, fingers crossed, Bob makes it across the finish line here for another 5 years of service in the state. Bob, I want to continue on here. We were talking about, we've been talking about a lot of stuff, facilities, but I do want to touch on one thing because I know you're probably going to cover this morning. One of the biggest problems, and this has become a national issue, in some cases, I mean, it's huge. It's huge. Chronic absenteeism. And since COVID, this has become a big deal. There are several states that have had chronic absenteeism of up to 47% in some areas since COVID has come and gone. And it's a real problem. And we have that same problem here in Alaska as well. Chronic absenteeism is a big deal. What do you think should be done about it? How can we fix it? How does it work with our school funding?
Yes, and sadly, we've been a statistical outlier and led the nation in chronic absenteeism for years and years. And I think it's something that's ultimately fixable by the way that we fund our schools. We actually have districts where 70% of the kids are chronically absent. That means they miss more than 15 days of school a year, and those are in some rural areas. But our urban areas are really not doing that great either. The chronic absenteeism rate in Anchorage, Kenai, and Matsu is above 20%. And actually, all three of those areas are double the rate of chronic absenteeism of Los Angeles. And when you look at the way the California funds their schools compared to the way we fund our schools based upon enrollment in a 3-week period in October, where California funds their schools based on actual attendance all year round, and that the there's very much a financial interest in schools, making sure kids are in school, and if they're not in school, there's a good reason they're not in school, because if you look at our attendance numbers, they're really high in October during that attendance period, and they drop down dramatically across the year. And I'm really an outcomes-based guy, not much into inputs, and attendance has been very much an input, but I think there's a pretty strong correlation between our horrible chronic absenteeism rate and our outcomes, and so I think it could be fixed with one sentence added to the code that would and I'm in consultation with some lawmakers about that, about a legislative remedy for that.
So instead of having just a 3-week period in October where they count the butts in the seats, instead, like California and several other states, it should be based on what? Attendance average over the course of a year? The previous year? How does that work?
I guess, probably the simplest way to do is take the actual enrollment during that 3-week period, so you get the enrollment for this year, that year, but then take the actual attendance rate for the district in the previous year, and multiply that by the actual attendance rate, and then you come up with a number, and it gives the district's motivation through the year, because they know it'll impact next year's funding if they don't keep kids in school.
One of the big questions, of course, that has been launching some real problems, of course, is the charter schools. The governor wanted a charter school program that would allow charter schools to be formed outside of the local school boards, because I think he felt that there is some conflict of interest there in some of that, and wanted to be able to have it, take it to the state and create those. And the fact is that Alaska charter schools are some of the best in the nation. And if we've got something that works, why aren't we emulating it over and over and over again? And instead, it seems like we're getting roadblocks on charter schools, and we're not necessarily. You were talking earlier about several of the charter schools that have got long waiting lists and have done very well for a lot less money. What do we need to what do we need to do? How do we increase our support for charter schools?
And one of the governor's asks was that we have additional charter authorizers, and Alaska is pretty unique in that we have the best performing charter schools based upon that Harvard study, but we're also one of the most poorly supported charter school systems in the United States. National Alliance of Public Charter Schools ranks us third from the bottom, only 83 points out of a possible 240 in their scoring system. And one of the big defects is the fact that we leave the sole authority for charter authorizations in the hands of the local school boards. We're only one of 5 states in the United States that does that technique, and it leaves this huge asymmetrical power relationship between the charter school applicants and the local school boards. Basically, the local school boards get to dictate the terms, and the applicants have to comply because they have no other option. In Ohio, there's 5 different charter authorities you can go to. Most states, Florida, that I point out to, that, and as I say, if Florida's doing it, we should be doing it. Going back to the old Harry Met Sally line, I'll have what she's having. When the outcomes are as good as they are in Florida, we should be doing everything as closely to the same as they can to duplicate those results.
I mean, I've said that for many things. We've talked about that with homelessness and education and every other issue. If somebody else is doing a good job, maybe we need to look at what we're doing, tear it back down to the framework, and build it back up based on what other people are doing who are having success with it. I mean, that to me, that just makes sense from a common sense and kind of a business type perspective. If somebody is doing a good job with something, you look at what they do and you emulate it. I mean, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Hey, look, they're doing a good job. How do we do that? And how do we do it for the least amount of money possible? That should be the kind of the mantra when you're talking about government services. We want the service, but we want it to be efficient, we want it to be successful, and we want it to be at the lowest rate possible. And if we're not delivering a good product, in this case, students, then maybe we should rethink our drink. We should rethink how we're doing things. You still with me, Bob, or did I lose you? Well, Bob got frozen there. We're talking with Bob Griffin from the Alaska State Board of Education and Early Development. We are talking about the state of schools in the state of Alaska, and we're going to continue. We're going to continue with him. We just lost Bill. Bob just dropped completely off the net here, so we're going to wait for him to rejoin us. Coming up in hour 2, we'll be talking with State Senator Mike Shower. He's going to be giving us the rundown of what he sees happening over the next 5 or 6 weeks here, of the final weeks of the session, as we get through there and get things squared away in those final weeks. We do have now the budget swap that's happened, and so we'll see how that budget swap worms its way through. Bob just sent me a text and said it looks like his internet crashed at the hotel. Let's see if we can get. Well, let's just call Bob. Let's just do that. How about that? We'll call Bob and see if we can get him on the phone here for the last couple minutes. We've only got about 3.5 minutes yet, but I wanted to get his final thoughts on this right now. So let's see if we can call him and get him on the program to discuss. There we go. We'll do that. One more thing.
Hey, it looks like my hotel internet died all of a sudden here.
Yeah, well, welcome to Internet in Alaska. Okay, Bob, so we're down to the last 2.5, 3 minutes here, so I wanted to give you a final shot, final bite at the apple. Your exhortation to the public and to people, whether you make it back onto the state board or not, what should we be watching for? What should we take away from all this? Give us your final thoughts here.
Yeah, no, I think that I'm optimistic about the future. We still have a ton of work to do. That that if we continue to just emulate things that things that they're doing in Florida, I think that is probably the best model to try and track and emulate. That when you look at the turnarounds that Mississippi has done by doing those type of things, and those impacts of early childhood literacy have long-term effects and produce better outcomes for kids who are high school graduates, and we'll start producing the workforce that we need in Alaska, and getting the value for money. I don't think anybody cares as much about how much it costs as if we were getting a good product. I think we're well on our way for turning that around through the leadership of Governor Dunleavy and Commissioner Bishop.
Final thought here in the last 60 seconds. This decision on the correspondence, do you see this being resolved here during this session? Do you think that there's an easy fix to this? What are your thoughts on that real quick?
I don't think there's any easy fixes, but I think I think mother or the necessity is the mother of invention that will come up with some sort of solution that won't leave 22,000 families in the lurch right now with an intensely popular program. Everybody's pretty motivated to find a solution. Actually, the plaintiffs in the case asked for a stay when they realized what the enormous chaotic impact it would have.
Yeah, it's been a hot mess, that's for sure. All right, Bob Griffin, good luck this morning, my friend. We look forward to talking with you again in the future. Appreciate you coming on board. Hold the line for just a second. Folks, we're out of time. And we just went to break. I ran right up against it. That's how it works. All right, Bob, I'll give you final bite at the apple. Anything we missed, any topics that we should have touched on real quick, anything you wanted to bring up that I didn't bring up, now's the time to do it here.
No, I think we hit it pretty hard there, and we'll do some follow-ups on a little bit more specifics. This was a pretty general overview, but I'd love if you'd have me back sometimes where we could hit some of the specifics of the excuses are where and then where our kids aren't poor. We don't have a bunch of kids who don't speak English, and things like that that's been the excuses that we've gotten from the education establishment for a long, long time.
Right. Well, it'd be good to have you continuing in there in the board. I hope that you get confirmed and are able to stay. If not, one way or the other, you'll still be fighting it. I know on the outside. I'd love to continue this discussion down the road, Bob. Thank you so much. I promise to abuse your email and send you questions and ask you to come on more often. I appreciate you coming on board today.
I appreciate it. Hey, thanks.
Thanks for being part of it today. All right, Bob Griffin, our guest here on the Michael Duke Show. Yeah, man, the internet in this state it doesn't get any better, man. It just doesn't get any better. I've got the fastest internet out. No, guess not. Oh, I'm just going through some of the comments here, and they're already making me chuckle this morning. The comments, that is. A ship just probably pulled in, said Angie, into Juneau and sucked up all the bandwidth in the entire area. It's possible. Bob has a confirmation hearing in the House Education this morning. A full legislature will vote on confirmations in a couple weeks. Yep, I'm hoping that he will continue to get that support. He's got a lot of good information, and he sent me a copy of his talking points for this morning. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he answers some of the questions and what questions actually come out of the Board of Education. This should be a real interesting tidbit. The thing that kills me is that Florida scored almost dead last in the funding of their schools, according to that Rutgers report. With the least adequately funded system, with the least fiscal effort score, 12 out of 100. That's what they got. Yet they reign supreme when it comes to the numbers in math and reading and everything else out of there. And Alaska came out 95 out of 100 with that ranking for fiscal effort, meaning we're well done. We only had one state come ahead of us, and yet we're 42nd, 48th, 49th, 51st on some of these things. That's just, again, it's states are different. States have different sizes and economies of scale and everything else. But if somebody is doing it, and Mississippi, again, also jumping up from, what was Mississippi? Mississippi was, in 2005, Mississippi was 45th. In 2013, Mississippi was 45th. And then they instituted their Read by 9 type program. And today, in 2019, they were number 3. Today, they're number 2 in the 4th grade reading NEEP scores. And Florida has been taking that spot every year for the last 5 years. And so, it's, again, find places that are doing a good job with whatever the issue is, education, homelessness, whatever it is. Find out what they're doing, how they're doing it, and emulate it. That just seems to make the most sense to me, anyway. I mean, that why reinvent the wheel? If they're doing a good job with it, then why would you want? Communities living in fear will never excel in much, and you want to blame the kids and imitate Florida? Who's blaming the kids? You're blaming the kids. Don't put your issues on me, bud. I would like to imitate Florida because they're doing a good job. That's why. So, you just, yeah. Okay. We're going to continue here. We've got State Senator Mike Showers going to be joining us here in just a hot second. Let me see if I can get him on the blower. I'll get you on the blower, governor. All right, here we go. See if we can get him situated and going on. Well, that didn't work. Hold on, I'll call you right back. Let me try that one more time. I love it when it works. I hate it when it doesn't. Let's try that again. Come on. There you go. Can you hear me now?
How about now?
Yep, I can hear you now. All right. So
Okay.
it's all good. It's all good. Sorry, we're just getting things ready here. Rob just $20. Yep, Harold, you still owe another $20 to my house in Wasilla. My house in Wasilla. Send it over to Michelle Overstreet. She'll take care of it for you. Computer science professor once told.
I just want to find out if he's actually paying or if it's all talk.
Oh, I think it's just talk, but who knows? A computer science professor told me once, said Rob, good programmers write good code, great programmers copy good code. Yeah, no, that's, again, if you find something that's working, why don't we emulate it? I don't care where it came from. I don't care what they're doing. As long as they're not hurting anybody else, why should we be doing that? All right. You ready to go, my friend? We're about to jump back into it. Yeah.
Bring it.
What? All right. I was confused for a minute. Let's continue on the Michael Duke Show. Common Sense Radio. Hour 2 is right now. Here we go.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
And live around the world on the interwebs at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning and welcome to the program, Hour 2 of the big radio show. I can't believe we got to Hour 2 so quick. I mean, that was like lickety split. We just finished up with Bob Griffin in Hour 1, who came in to talk with us about education. He's on the State Board of Ed and is coming up for confirmation this morning in the House. And of course, he's still got to face it in the Senate, and then the whole legislature's got to vote, yada, yada, yada. That'll take a couple weeks. But he came on today to give us his thoughts on the state of education. And there's some good details in there, some good info. And we look forward to talking with him again on that. But right now, let's get into it. We've got State Senator Mike Shower is our guest. He comes on every week to give us his take on what's happening from the outside, looking in. I keep thinking it's like Christmas time and that kid who's got his nose pressed up against the glass, looking at all the kids enjoying the toys in the toy shop. Sometimes it must feel that way. Mike Shower joins us this morning. Hello, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing good. How goes it?
It's just another beautiful day in paradise. That's all I can say right now. I mean, summer is coming. That's the good news for today, is that summer is coming, hopefully sooner rather than later. But it's all good. Mike, I want to talk a little bit about the last 4 weeks of session here and what's going to be coming up. But first and foremost, I would be remiss if we didn't talk about the elephant in the room, which in this case is this decision last Friday by the Superior Court judge that basically gutted the homeschooling system, the idea type system where you get the allotment every week or every year, and you have to justify what you're doing, et cetera, et cetera. I think everybody was a little surprised, including the plaintiffs in this. They were a little surprised. What are your thoughts? What are you hearing? What's been the reaction down south there as this whole thing is kind of unwound in front of you?
Well, I mean, we have plenty to talk about, as I predicted we would this time of year. As Scott Ogan used to say, so this is the time of year the oil gets hot and the popcorn starts popping. So it's one of my favorite sayings of his. And it was the other thing he said this time of year. This is when people's backbones turn into wishbones. So on voting for budgets and things like that. So just watch those campaign promises coming up here. We'll see how it is. This is an election year,
I
Michael.
forget.
This
Yeah.
is the
Yeah.
I love the PFD. No, trust me. This time, Charlie Brown, I won't pull the football. Just give me another 2 to 4 years. Come
Yeah.
on.
I know it.
It's just fascinating.
I loved the full
Fascinating.
PFD. I voted for it before I voted against it. I mean, I voted against it before I voted
No.
for it. I can't. Which one is it?
Well, the PFD is that's a whole nother topic, but that's a dinosaur. They're gonna make that thing extinct sooner rather than later. I just whatever. Another day. But you asked a question. So yes, that I I have been hearing some talking to different lawyers, getting perspective on this ruling and listening to people pontificate on it. One of the most fascinating things is a long-serving lawyer talked to a couple days ago said they have never seen in their career a plaintiff win a ruling from a judge and then almost immediately request a stay on the ruling. And before the defendants could even ask the judge for a stay. Never seen anything like this in my life.
Right.
The lawyer said. I'm like, wow. I mean, that tells you an awful lot, Michael, about how this played out. Scott Kendall has his fingerprints on anything that's going to be anti-American, anti-conservative, anti-Republican, anti-Dunleavy, free and fair election system. If it's got something bad to it, then his name's attached. And the Northern Justice Project and other legal eagles, so called. I mean, that guy's got his fingers in so many pies, and it's always something you're like, really, you're going to do that? And the plaintiffs on this one, I asked another lawyer what standing. I said, why? But well, every Alaskan has standing. So okay. Why would parents that have their kids in the public education system care what other parents are doing with their kids and what works for them? Because remember, this was brought by parents. Now, I would not be surprised if Kendall and certain people in a certain arm of government and certain legislators in another arm of government have been coordinating on this from the beginning. Michael, it's got all the earmarks of people coordinating on this effort.
Well,
I would not be surprised for 1 second if the parents and/or these guys were all talking. Well, let's get together because that's what you do, right? You got to have somebody with standing to cause the lawsuit.
It was parents, but it's also being funded by the NEA. I mean, there's no two ways about it. The newspapers are reporting that the NEA is supporting this as well, and these parents that they got out there to do this thing. And you're right. I mean, the read between the lines in every story that I read was the plaintiffs were just shocked at how far Zeman went on this. They're just like, whoa. I think they were expecting him to peel back the one statute that Dunleavy and Kathy Giesel, of all people, supported back in 2014. Again, another one of those I was for it before I was against it. I think they expected them to just peel back that part of the statute, but instead he basically line-eyed him the whole thing. And that was shocking to them. They were not expecting that. And now they've created a new problem for themselves. First off, they've created a problem for almost 20% of the students out there. Second of all, they may have awoken a sleeping giant because all those 20,000 students, 18,000 students, they have parents that will go out and vote. And this is something that they're going to be able to hang on these people come election time.
Well, there's so many things taking place here, Michael. I mean, first of all, I think it's 22,000 something and change kids that are known. There's also apparently several thousand kids that are probably being homeschooled. The state doesn't really track because they're not taking any funding. Parents that don't want anything to do with it or the strings that are attached. So it's bigger than that. And if you include people that just don't want any part of the public education system at all, you can include the nearly 6,000 kids in the charter school system. So it's a big number, Michael. I mean, when you're talking, maybe 125,000, 129,000 students, ballparkish. And, what did I just add up there? Somewhere north of 30. That's a big chunk, right? And this more than 20%. So you have, so that's tens of thousands of families, right? That you just affected with one fell swoop by a judge who wiped out 2 full statutes. You're talking about something that we have been doing for the better part of a century in this state, since we were a territory, right? We've been doing this because Alaska has unique needs as far as geography and distance and how spread out we are, and not a solid road system everywhere. So there's a lot of reasons why, but the precedent has been set. There's an old saying in the judicial branch, it's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So we've been doing this successfully for the better part of a century. If you go back to the Constitutional Convention and read the founders, including Jack Coghill, right? One of the original founders, Lieutenant Governor. The arguments, you go back and read some of it, they talked about this, and while they didn't want public money to go to just purely religious, that was the resistance some people had. Remember, this was founded, back in the heady days of the progressive movement in the 40s, and setting up the Missouri Plan for the judicial system and other types of things. They didn't want the religious aspect, but then the arguments you can look and see where they talked about, we have to have a correspondence program. I mean, they argued about this. It's clear the founders wanted a correspondence program, homeschool, if you will, that type of thing, just not public funds going to a religious, basically a religious school. That was really it. So look at all of the things that you were unraveling when this judge comes in and just wipes out 2 entire statutes, basically. And it's a precedent we've been doing for the better part of a century. The founders wanted it. Before 2014, we were already doing this as far as with allotments and other things. This is unraveling so much stuff. I'm sure you guys, Bob, talked about this morning. He's a wealth of information on this. Has been very tied to the school system as far as just studying it and knowing what's going on. But I mean, Michael, you are talking about something that has the potential here, that if you read it and depending on how it's interpreted, to unravel way more than just some homeschooler kids. Because I think at the press conference, some of the Senate majorities, minimal impact, not a big deal. But yeah, they want all the kids back on the government plantation, Mike. They want every dollar going through the NEA and through the education lobby, where they can basically pay off their constituents by making sure they get every dollar they get.
Right.
Don't kid yourself for 1 second and think what this is all about. Minimal impact? You're uprooting tens of thousands of families' education system we've been doing for the better part of it. It's not minimal impact.
That's why the NEA
and beyond that, it could.
That's why the NEA was involved. They want, again, every dollar that goes through the system, they get their fingers on through the employees and the health benefits and all. That's a huge chunk of money. That's why the NEA was involved. It's not about the kids. It's about the money.
It's never been about the kids, Michael. Not to all. And let's be clear. Let's not. I go back to, I'm always going to caveat, because they always want to say things and turn your words and twist them against you. This is not about the children, right, for them. But there are good teachers that care about the kids. It's about the system. When we start talking about the system, this is about big unions, because this ain't just the NEA, Mike. If you think AFL-CIO, IBEW, and all the rest of them are not all tied at the hip at this, because what affects one affects the other, it does, right? And so the teachers are the front line. They're your first responders, right? Like cops, like firefighters, like EMS. The teachers, while many of them, yes, lean left, and your union members, et cetera, many of them care greatly about the kids, or they wouldn't be doing it, right? But when you talk about the system, that's a different thing. That's about money, right? That's why they want the numbers. And if you think for 1 second from an ideological perspective that a lot of people, including left-leaning legislators, Democrats and others, the whole system, the broader, educational system in the U.S. leans way to the left, progressive, Marxist, communist. Look at our colleges, Mike. I mean, they would make Stalin and Lenin proud, a lot of our universities today. So when you look at that, this isn't also about just money. This is about ideology. They want the kids back in the government plantation because they get the dollars, but then they get to indoctrinate our children.
Yeah, it's about
and create a whole other generation of little Marxists and progressives. So don't think this is not a broader context. So when I go back and tell you that this was a coordinated effort between certain people to get this, it absolutely is. This is a coordinated effort. This is not just some random parent who said, I don't like that public dollars are going to my neighbor's kids who are homeschooling, so therefore I'm going to generate this entire lawsuit. Come on. Nobody does that. This is an ideologue or a bunch of people that said, let's make up a plan. Here's how we're going to get back at those religious wackos that are homeschooled, which is bogus, because homeschool has exploded across the nation. By the way, during COVID, when it woke a lot of people up to what was going on, the biggest growth in homeschool, it's not those white right-wing MAGA people. Mike, it's exploded by many percentage points. Black, Latino, and Asian have exploded with homeschooling across the nation. So this is a big deal, Mike. This is a coordinated effort to undo what they view as something that gets kids out of the system. Is more, they're afraid of it because it's more effective. The grades of homeschoolers and charter schools, et cetera, are off the charts compared to the brick and mortar public schools. And why would people be so, if it's really about the children, Michael, if it really is, why are people so after homeschooling and correspondence schooling and green room things they're doing and charter, all of this? Why would they be against it? Because in public school, the old saying from World War II, the convoy can only go as fast as the slowest ship. And if the kids are being slowed down that have a potential to do better, they have a better environment, they can go faster, they can get into college or trade school, they can do all these things. Why would you, if it's really about the children, Michael, if the education system, if these legislators and others really cared about the children, why would they support taking away any other option that children have that is allowing them to do better, move faster, and get a better shot at life? A point to you, my friend, is it's not really about the children. It's about the money and the indoctrination for these people. That's the bottom line at the end of the day.
What if I told you it was all about control? That's it. What if I told you it was all about control? All right, we got more coming up. State Senator Mike Shower's our guest. He's just getting warmed up, baby. Just getting warmed up. We're going to continue here. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return right after this.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show, because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, we continue now. State Senator Mike Shower is our guest. That's sad. David Boyle says, Senators Ten Stevens, Kathy Giesel, and Loki Tobin will craft the new law for correspondence schools. Oh, if that's the case, oh man, I can't wait to see what kind of a train wreck that is. I mean, that would be just disastrous at this point.
Well, any bill that people that are in the education system, that taught, teachers, et cetera. Again, being real clear that I support teachers in this, not the system per se. They're going to draft it. I mean, people, not naming those people specifically because I don't know who would be involved in it, but the goal will be, Michael, to take money away from homeschoolers, because again, homeschoolers have a reputation, right? Oh, those are right-wing religious people. They're Trump supporters. They're MAGA. They're whatever. That's the image. When it's not true anymore as it used to be. It is now millions upon, tens of millions of kids across the country are in this because parents have realized it's a better setup. It is better for their children. It gives children more opportunity moving into life, and they do better for 100 reasons. They do better. And so they will craft something that will take away that funding, that will try to strip people back into these school systems so they get the dollars and they get the indoctrination. Ultimately, I'm going to keep saying that, Mike, because that's what this is about to many of them. They don't want to let the children go. Lenin said it, give me the children, I'll change a country in a generation. I'm paraphrasing, with something to that effect. Because they know if they can change young minds, they'll get an entire group of ideologues in the next generation, which is what they've been doing in our education system for a century. So they'll craft something, all right, but that something will be designed to basically take it, and they'll say, oh, no, this is a better thing. This is going to help. This is going to make it so much better. Well, what it will do, somehow it will either through funding or the state will have every right to look at every single thing that the student gets. They'll have a right to come in and do spot inspections in their house if you homeschool. They'll make it so people don't want to be a part of it. And what that will do, Michael, as usual, it will hurt the poorest Alaskans and the bottom of the middle class the most, just like taking the PFD. This will hurt them because they'll look at it and go, what option do I have? I don't have the money to buy the curriculum and et cetera, so I guess you're going back to a brick and mortar school. That's what's going to happen, Mike. That's how they're going to play this. But like you said, we'll talk about it because we didn't get to it, is how much they screwed up in this lawsuit with this judge, and they have created a firestorm, and I am laughing all the way to the November election on this one.
The Loki Tobin's comment in the article was, I was just like, wow. She all of a sudden said, well, the system is just not handled and equipped to be able to take these 25,000 students back right now. Like, it was like, we're just not ready. We're just, you think you've got a problem now, blah, blah, blah. But it is absolutely about the money. Donna says, Donna in the chat room says, it's absolutely about the money. I invited our local school board into the school I teach at to actually see what a classroom of 32 students looked like. He walked in, counted the heads, and said, that's a lot of money. Is it about the kids or is it about the money? That's a lot of money coming out of our schools. Again, I am just shocked that, well, I guess I'm not shocked, but I'm just, this is the point. The point is that it's about the money. It's about the control. Why did they attack the homeschooling? Why? Well, first of all, I will say this, and this has been my criticism from the get-go. When you got people like Jody Taylor and others out there flaunting the fact that they're, using the money for things that it wasn't necessarily intended for, and they're, you were just asking to get punched in the snoot at that point. I mean, really, it's just, when I was homeschooling our kids, we never spent anything on religious material or secular thing. We just didn't do that. I mean, because we'd been told we couldn't do that. And I understood, okay, the Constitution says this, you can't do that. Okay, we'll abide by that. But we'll use that for everything else, from music lessons to whatever, all the non-religious stuff. That's been going on for decades. So there is a little bit of blame to be laid at the feet of some of these parents who were out there flaunting it. But in the long run, I think that these guys got a lot more than they bargained for with this. And I think it's going to come back to bite them. I think they're going to regret that. All right, here we go. We're going to let Mike off the chain here. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff. Here we go.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
State Senator Mike Shower is our guest. The Shower Hour of Power, where we get a chance to analyze and dissect things that are going on in state government with him every week. We've been talking about the decision by the judge last Friday that basically, instead of just cutting out the statute that was the problem, which was the statute that was put forward by Dunleavy and Giesel back in 2013, that had a companion bill. That was the interesting thing, is that piece of legislation had a companion bill that would have modified the Constitution to remove the verbiage about religious or private institutions. And the constitutional amendment part of it failed. It didn't even make it. It didn't make it out of the thing. People never got a chance to vote on it, but they still voted the law in. And so it was there. It was being used. But instead of just eliminating that new part of the statute, the judge zeroed out essentially the entire statute, which has been used for decades to fund allotment and correspondence programs around the state. But I think this is going to have some unintended consequences for the re-election cycle. What do you think here, Mike?
Well, that's the first thing I said when I saw the first article I read last week when it was breaking. I immediately put it on social media within like 5 minutes, I think, of it coming out, because it was really moving quick. And I could already see a couple comments where people getting upset, and I'm looking at going, I'm like, actually, as Republicans, conservatives, independents, undeclared, break right, whatever, you should be thanking Kendall and his crowd. I said, they just handed us, tens of thousands of families that are going to come out and vote now that may not have before. So I said, this is a gift, Michael. I was making a joke. Somebody said, are you sure this judge isn't a conservative plant? Because this is just a gift. I mean, you add this to what Biden's doing to Alaska as a Democrat and the left, just destroying this state from a perspective of being able to develop our resources. You had activist judges or whatever doing stuff like this. I mean, Michael, it's just like they're just giving us reason after reason for people, for Republicans and conservatives and others to come to even undeclared, just people in the middle. they're just kind of, fence riders on either, can go either way. They're giving them every reason to get to the polls and get rid of some of these people from the president on down and go, what are you doing? You are killing this country. You are strangling the economy. You are giving our enemies, people that are, that have oppression in their today, not 200 or 100 years ago or 200, but today they're extinguishing their own people in certain big countries in Asia. They're just raping the environment in places with, terrible, if any, environmental laws or regulations of how they do business. And, Biden's giving, what I just read from Dan Sullivan just said a couple of days ago. It's like Biden just said, hey, we're going to, allow Venezuela to start doing its oil thing and Chevron, I think, to go down to whatever, but you're shutting down Alaska. So a place with known human rights violations and no regulations for environmental control to develop resources responsibly. We're going to do, Biden wants to do business with them and let them drill for oil and stuff, but you're going to shut down us, where we have obviously very strong human rights laws and environmental regulations. It's insanity. Literally, it's insanity. The inmates are running the asylum, Mike. And if people, how many more reasons do you need to get to the polls and try to change out some more of the players? And I know I keep saying that, you don't always change things, but goodness gracious, Mike, we cannot keep on this path, or there will be no America as we would have recognized it even 10 years ago left to talk about. From, them going after homeschoolers, which I thought is supposed to be about the children. Clearly it's not. It's about the money and the ideology. I agree with Donna, the commenter, that, it's not the teachers. Like I said, I want to be clear. It's not the teachers. They're teaching, what they're told to be taught, what they have to be taught. That they're the ones on the front lines. This is the system, the administrators, the supporters, the big unions, the national level things that are happening when I talk about the system that way, not about the teachers per se. They're in the classroom trying to do the best they can with what they have. Well, yeah, that's about money. But for the system and others, it's about ideology, right? It's about indoctrinating the children into, left-wing points of view. Marxism is great. Communism, sure. Socialism, it's only because we've never gotten it right. But this time, Charlie Brown, the system won't pull the football out from under you. And we'll get it right this time. Sure, we will. No, you won't. You'll never get it right, because it's not something that encourages human freedom and entrepreneurship and motivation and something for people to look forward to and to go out and create their own business. No, it doesn't. It tamps down that human spirit. All of these other things we're talking about, Mike, socialism, communism, Marxism, they tamp down the human spirit. They trample freedom. That's why they don't work, because eventually people get sick of it and tired of it. And it has to be brought in with the point of a government gun to create it and enforce it.
Yeah.
Because without that, it would go the other way. People don't want that kind of thumb over the top of them. But governments get powerful enough, they can shut it all down.
Well, and it's about the people being offended that how dare parents would not put their kids in these indoctrination centers. How dare they would have a different ideal or ideology or a different opinion about how they should educate their children. How dare they should do that? Everybody should fail equally. That's the thing.
So how are they going to fix it, Mike?
Yeah,
how are they going to fix it?
If homeschooling,
point of a government gun.
Yeah, if homeschooling and charter schools and all these other things were so horrible, then their numbers would obviously be worse than brick and mortar. But since they're not, everybody's got to fail equally. We got to have equity. We got to have equality in outcomes. Everybody should be equally miserable and have equally.
That's my point.
The whole thing.
That's my point. And that's enforced at the point of a government gun, Mikey. Use my youngest son's name, Michael. Default there. Oops. So that is, it's a threat. They're a threat to the system, Michael, which is why the threat must be dealt with. But what did I just say about ideology? It has to be done at the point of a government gun, because people don't want to live under that thumb. Homeschool families, charter schools, they don't want to live under a brick and mortar system that's failing their kids, not giving them the best options. So they're going to take the better option. So what's going to happen? You're going to have ideologues like Kendall and the legal team, the lawfare that we're seeing so prevalent in the country today. They're going to use the legal system and the arm of government and then get legislators. So I'm telling you right now, Mike, there's some coordination behind closed doors. I'm telling you. And this is their plan. And what they're going to do is now they've caused a crisis, right? Never let a good crisis go to waste. Now that they've caused the crisis, now they can come in and fix it. And they're going to fix it in some way that at the point of a government gun, by taking funding, allowing inspectors to come into your house, having a public person, some bureaucrat come in and vet every single piece of paper the kids read in homeschool. They're going to do something at the point of a government gun, right, metaphorically at your head, to force families out and force them back in the school system, whether it's stripping money, something. That's how they'll do it. See how the whole thing is? We create a crisis and then we're going to solve it. That's what this is about, Mike. They just created a bit more of a crisis than they were planning on. So they have really put themselves in a pickle because they have pissed off a lot of people listening to Bob and others talk. This ruling could unravel way more than just homeschooling, per se, in air quotes. This could unravel, what we get from textbooks, because those are private institutions. This could unravel kids being able to go use that allotment to play sports, to do martial arts or any types of sports or music, you name it. There's a whole lot of things that could have just been undone by this. This is not just those homeschoolers, up in the religious compound up in Delta Junction, being facetious. This is mainstream, normal people trying to give their kids a better opportunity, and Kendall and that judge and their crowd and these parents that just decided they didn't like those other parents that went to church on Sunday, whatever they did, whatever their little thing is here, Mike, they may have unraveled far more than they bargained for. And I was just talking to a person yesterday, actually, and that person shall stay unnamed. And I was kind of laughing and going, I'm laughing all the way to November, because they just really screwed the pooch on this one. And I don't think they saw this coming. Like I said, go back to what plaintiff wins a case and then immediately asks the judge, hold on a second. Maybe that's a little much.
Right.
There's panic, Mike. There's panic in the streets right now.
Like
blood in the water.
Like you, I was trying to decide whether this judge is a villain or a hero, because I'm like, okay, wait a minute. He could have just eliminated but instead he did. So I'm trying to decide, is he the villain or is he the hero? Because again, it's motivated a whole bunch of people to move on in this as well. All right, Mike. Well,
I don't know, Mike. Maybe he was an unwitting hero. I have no idea. Don't know the guy. I couldn't tell you. But there's clearly some coordination, and I'm not saying with the judge necessarily, but certainly with people, legislators and parents and Kendall and the folks that did all this. Somebody's talking to somebody.
Yeah. So what else is we're coming down here, Mike? The trade-off, the Mexican standoff happened in the hallway. Everybody kumbaya'd and hugged it out and did it, and they got their budgets and everything else. The Senate, I mean, just all of a sudden it just popped up out of nowhere. Oh, here's a capital budget. Really no discussions or anything else, but they turned it over. So walk us through what happened there in those final days as the capital budget came through. I know that you got up on the floor and had some words to say about the inequity, speaking of equity, the inequity of basically having the Matsu shuffled out to Buffalo on any of the capital projects and everything.
Well, apparently some of the Senate majority believe in equity of outcomes unless it's the capital budget, in which case they can take all the money and give none to certain legislative districts. And then that's totally equitable. So, yeah, I've got some words. I was called out of order twice, just kept on talking because I don't really care at this point. When your district gets completely screwed in a way that's punitive. Remember, Mike, last year when they first press conference, I think it was the Senate president, somebody asked them, hey, the fact that you guys are basically, to summarize, screwing over the three Republicans that are the conservative ones and shoving them in a minority and giving them no committees and just treating them very poorly, when some of you, at least one, if not maybe one other one, has been in a minority before that's in leadership in the Senate majority and was less than the 5 required, but still got treated with committees and press resource, treated like a minority, right, with a minority leader, et cetera. And you guys aren't going to do that? And the Senate president said, isn't that punitive? He said, I don't know how else you'd look at it. In other words, acknowledging that this entire thing was just punishment. For what? For having a different point of view? For fighting for our people in our districts and what we believe in? Wow, I didn't know you get punished for that now. And this is, in my opinion, Mike, this is just a continuation of the punitive actions of this majority against the 3 minority members. Because when you look at the numbers, and I can go through them here. I actually get some on that little piece of paper. I got several of them. Let's talk about that. So when you look at some of the numbers here, yeah, I got facts, right?
3 minutes before you get wound up. 3 minutes.
Oh, no. I can talk about most of it. So let's go over numbers here. Senate District A, Stedman, $13.2 million this is UGF state dollars. So what they had to spend, not STIP money that the feds give us on projects that are already queued up for years, et cetera. This is what the Senate Finance Table decided to give themselves, right? So Senator Stedman, District A, 13.2 million. Let's see, Senator Keel, 8.5, almost 8.6 million. Senator Stevens, 3.7. Bjorkman, 2.2. Giesel, 3.4 million. Kaufman, 2.8 million. Ray Jackson, 3.3 million. Clayman must have made somebody mad because he only got 1.9 million. Tobin, 2.6 million. Dunbar, 32.1 million. Wilikowski, 2.5 million. Merrick, 3.7 million. Wilson, I think got 3.5 million, but he's on the finance table. So, there you go. Kawasaki, 9.2 million. Bishop, 12.5 million. Hoffman, 6.7 million. Olson, 3 million, right? So if I go through and add up, Mike, the Senate Finance Table members, it's like 25 million. No, it's like 35 million. They gave themselves off the Senate Finance Table. Would you like to know how many dollars of UGF Senator Myers and myself, two of the three minority members, got from the UGF?
How much?
Take a guess.
0.
District O and Q, those two districts, 0 UGF dollars, not 1 penny from the Senate Finance Table for entire Senate districts, Mike. That's 80,000 people that are not going to get road improvements, maintenance, bridges, airports, infrastructure, crumbling buildings, fire trucks, you name it. Safety and life issues, right? They always talk about how important that is. We got $0. And yet the Senate majority members, including finance, co-chairs, et cetera, stood up and said, this is equitable. This is a good budget. This is a great thing here we've done. Really? Maybe for your district. And at the end, to show about like misrepresenting the facts, one of the finance co-chairs stood up in the wrap up and said, pulled up, and this is the funny thing, pulled up the STIP, right? So looked at the federal dollars and said, well, because this is the leaving out the things, the spin right on it. And it was, I'm looking at the paper here. This is federal money, Mike. They have no control over this, right? So remember that. This is the feds that dictating stuff, not what they control, the state dollars. District O, my district, right, has 25.9 million in it, and in my district, District A only has 22 million. And last time I checked, 22 million is less than 25. I'm like, and knowing that I can't get up to rebut that, right, because I've already had my chance to speak, although I knew this was coming. So leaves that out there like I'm getting more money. Kind of forgot to mention that off the finance table gave himself $13.2 million. So last time I checked, Mike, 13.2 plus 22, that's 35 something million. I've still got only 22 because I got 0. Last time I checked, Mike, 35 something million is more than 22 million by a lot. So this is the game that is being played because, like I said, and Senator Hughes, by the way, the other minority member, only the reason she's got 2.3 million, frankly, is because she has two very important people as her House members. One is the Speaker of the other body, and one of them is the finance co-chair. So I am sure they tried to make sure they got a little bit because that really piss off people that have some power on the other side. But guess what? Senator Myers and I got nothing. So guess what? We get nothing. Those are numbers, Mike, right off the books.
Right out of the books. We're going to continue this discussion. Mike Shower is our guest. We'll continue the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return to more right after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, we're in the break right now. Mike Shower is our guest. I don't know. Whoa. I don't know what that was. Mike's doing dishes or something.
Background noise, huh?
Yeah, no, it's like right there in my head. Wow. And you got your phone got real funky there for a minute. I don't know if you got it on speaker and you were walking away from it or whatever, but all of a sudden you sounded real tinny and far away. So be aware.
Being hacked.
You're being hacked. I want to comment here real quick. Just only because I'm confused. Frank says, Michael, yesterday you were questioning the governor's appointment. And I was asking why, and he said, you made a point to point out that Dunleavy appointed the judge who ruled in the homeschool litigation. To which I responded, well, that's what the news outlets were reporting, that he was a governor, he was a Dunleavy appointee. Now, I know the appointee process is, I mean, you know, the bar puts up the choices and the governor picks from the 3 choices and, you know, yada, yada, yada. But I don't know, was I wrong? Was I wrong on that, Franks? Was that, I mean, because that's what was reported. So I don't know how that had to do with anything, but I thought I'd throw that up there and just say it.
Well, let's just talk about that for one brief second, Michael. That it may be only the appointment, but this is like, you know, I don't know. I was trying to think of a real quick good analogy.
I don't bring the phone closer. I don't know. It just sounds like all of a sudden you're in a can. So
I'm in an earpiece. You can't hear me at all?
Now I can hear you. Now you sound like you're up close.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was weird.
Huh.
So anyway, I'm sorry.
Anyways,
go ahead.
Well, let's just be, I mean, the governor has no choice, Mike. He can keep sending back and give me more, but they're just going to keep cycling through people they want because Dunleavy has no control over the process. I have a bill for that, but that didn't even get more than one hearing out of state affairs. I mean, all of the policy committees are controlled by Democrats, but Dunleavy has to appoint somebody or those seats just stay vacant. I guess you could say, well, just leave them vacant, but we need the courts to be doing their job. So the system is set up so Dunleavy only gets to pick from who they give them. So, it's really hard to blame Dunleavy on this one.
Well, and I wasn't and I'll be honest, it wasn't a blame. It was more of a throwaway thing that just as I was reading the article, I mentioned that he was a Dunleavy appointee. Now, again, knowing that you get the lesser of all, you get to choose the lesser of whatever evils they give to you. That's what it is. I mean, it's not a chastisement. There's plenty of things I can criticize the governor on. That was not necessarily one of them, but some people, I guess, just take it the wrong way when it all comes down to it. But like I said, still not sure if the guy's a hero or a villain at this point, because I think he's
maybe we should be cheering Dunleavy's choice in this case, because this guy, just like I said, Mike, he's handed us a gift.
Yeah, maybe
there's no other way to look at it.
Maybe he did us a solid at this point. That's for sure. All right. Ironic though, don't you think that? Well, no, I'll leave that one. I'll leave that sleeping dog's lie at that point. I'm going back. I'm going back and looking at some of the accounts here. Kevin just said the FAA just ordered a ground stop on most Alaska Airlines flights. From the ADN. Let me pull that up real quick. FAA orders ground stop on most Alaska Airlines flights due to computer problems. Weight and balance issues. Is that what it's about? Affected all experience issue while performing an upgrade to the system that calculates our weights and balance. So, so Alaska Airlines flights on hold for the moment. Updated statement said the stop was instituted at 6:30 a.m. and they have begun releasing flights by 7:45, which was 2 minutes ago. So there you go.
Yeah, they're usually moving that kind of stuff pretty fast.
Yeah. Okay. All right. They're saying check your flight status before heading to the airport. All right. So that's good. Okay. Any other comments or questions for Mike here before we Mike needs a new Android phone. There we go.
Maybe.
Hey, maybe it's all said and done. Melody says, I'm one of Shower's constituents, and State Senator Mike Shower's doing a great job. There we go.
Thank you, Melody.
Here's Randy. Randy's making his plea to you, Mike. We need Senator Shower to join the majority caucus. I don't think it'll be political suicide. His constituents are smart enough not to condemn him, even if he has to fight for the final budget on his vote for the final budget, as long as he advocated strongly for good things during the process. He wants you to join the pod, people, Mike.
Well, let's be honest, Michael. I did try. Shelley, Rob, and I gave them every possible avenue to choose to create a Republican-controlled caucus. We asked them for simple things, and we can make this work. So just separate the budget so we can have a separate vote on the capital operating and the PFD into a separate bill now. Just do that. And if we can have that battle, that's been the primary thing that's prevented it, Mike. It really has been the battle for the PFD. They won't. They keep shoving the budgets together, and it's an all or nothing. And what Randy is pleading for, we tried to do, Mike. They shut us out. They don't want us there because of the binding caucus, and they can't, guarantee our votes. But we gave them a path forward, and they refused to take it. So this is on them because they want their votes no matter what. And to do what they did, like I was throwing out numbers in the capital budget, that's what they do to us. Yeah. That's how they get us, because they put us in a square corner knowing that if I vote against the budget or vote against the PFD, I'm in big trouble in my district, right? It's going to be hard for me to get elected or reelected. They know it. That's why they do what they do, Mike. That's when people like Reback used to say, well, you get a bite at the apple. I'm like, no, you don't, because they give you a brand new apple at the end of the process. It doesn't matter. They're going to hose you. So we tried, Randy. We tried.
All right.
They won't do it.
Fairbanks is rejoined early. I don't know why, but we're going to jump back into it, folks in Fairbanks. Hi, how are you? Let's get back from the commercial break. Mike, I'm going to call you right back because your phone has gotten real bad. We're going to continue here. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe. Let's do this thing. Okay, final segment of the show this morning. Mike Shower is our guest. We had to reconnect with him because he was sounding like he was underwater. Hopefully things just got better, and we will continue on. Mike, down to the last, 5 weeks of the session here. The budgets have been swapped.
4 weeks, yeah.
And so what's going to happen now? You got any predictions? What do you see happening in the last 4 weeks? Between this and now, whether or not there's going to be a correspondence bill, what do you see happening here?
I think a correspondence bill is going to be hard because even if the Senate, being dominated by Democrats, thank you very much, with the policy committees and whatnot, even the finance table, is going to put out one version of the bill, right? You have the House that's still controlled by Republicans that's not going to want that bill. And the governor is going to want something that's not going to destroy homeschooling and charter schools and the rest of it and unravel the entire system. Remember, Mike's the one that put the bill in to codify essentially what we were doing in regulation anyways. So something that is going to satisfy the governor would be likely to veto some bill that would undo it is high, right? Of him doing that and holding that accountable. So something that we're going to somehow in this legislature that moves at this pace of cold molasses running downhill, unless there's a pandemic scaring everybody that thinks they're going to die and then we get out early. Outside of that, I don't know, Mike. I think it's going to be a hard thing to get accomplished in that amount of time between two bodies that have some wide disagreements and a governor that's going to be very key on this one to not let something through that's going to have any chance of unraveling homeschooling or correspondence schools, et cetera, plus all the other wide-ranging impacts at this point of this decision, because this thing can range far and wide. So I think we're going to hard to predict, but I don't see how we would come up with something in 4 weeks that's going to fit all of that bill. And we don't know what's going to happen on the final process, right? Because this is going to be appealed to the Supreme Court hopefully quickly. Boy, the Supreme Court's got to know what this does at this point. It's not just one person. This is all of them sitting there going, do we really want to do this? I mean,
right. Do they overturn it? Do they overturn it and send it back down? Do they do what? I mean, the problem is, of course, is if the legislature doesn't get something done with the regular session, I mean, this has got to be fixed before the next school year. So is it a special session time during an election season? I mean, what happens then?
Most of them aren't going to want to do that, right? Because some of them have some pretty strong challengers this time, and I've been looking at the names out there. So there's that. I got to think the Supreme Court would want to just say, okay, no, we're not doing this, and just strike it down and go back to what we have potentially, or maybe just strike out, one sentence or something to, try to live in the spirit of the Constitution if that's what they truly think this is a constitutional issue. I don't really think it is. I think, as I heard one lawyer say, they think it would be ruled spatially constitutional and maybe just clarify language, for people so that there's no doubt of what can and can't be done, et cetera, or whatever by the state. So something like that could change it, and the Supreme Court kind of cleans this up, this mess. So there's that. I've heard talk of, since we have over half of our budget for education in the state comes from the feds, there could be a federal nexus, to take this all the way to a circuit of the U.S. Supreme Court, if they would even take it. Who knows? But it's, the families that are fighting this is obviously going to be an option. I've heard that, like Betsy DeVos and others at the national level, we've reached national level again, right, Mike? Here we go. Alaska's back in the news, not in a good way, are going to help throw money at this to try to fight this ridiculous play that they have here on this, trying to destroy homeschooling in this state. So we'll see what happens, but it's hard to predict. There's a lot of play here in 4 weeks. I just don't see how.
And the national aspect is important because we've got decisions out there like the one in Montana, was Esposito, and some of these other ones where they basically declared portions of those constitutional provisions unconstitutional at the national level, and it's created some other problems. So this may open up the door to a wider claim, and that may be something that they don't want to get into.
It could. Well, so we'll see. I don't think it's likely. I mean, we could. Sometimes we move at a rocket pace when certain people in charge want something, but when they don't, they'll sit on it for years and nothing will happen. So it's hard to tell, Mike. There's a lot of moving parts here to include a still moving court case that's going to, potentially go, well, hopefully soon, is probably going to go to the U.S. or the Alaska Supreme Court. So, who knows, Mike? I don't know. Hard to tell.
Mike Shower is our guest. We're talking with him about the final days of the session. Mike, we got about 3 minutes here. So final thoughts here. I'll let you go, and we can get going on here. Let's give it to you right now.
Well, back to Randy's point, Randy, we did try to get joined. We sent a letter to them. We talked to them. We were giving them options. Here's what we need: very little. Just separate the budget so we can have different votes on them and fight for them. Not one big turducken that they keep shoving down our throat that screws over certain districts and chops the PFD. And they know in some districts that's a no-no. Their districts, they can get away with it. I mean, they need to be. This is like, we took like 3 steps towards them. They're not even taking 1 step our way. There's only so far you can go in negotiations before you just walk away and go, okay, they don't care. And so, Randy, I hear you, and I would be happy to join the majority, and we'll fight it out and do our best, but I can't if they won't play ball. And unfortunately, this big tent they keep talking about, we're Republicans, we have a big tent. No, you don't, because the Republican tent just seems to continue, including all the way up to certain members of the Alaska Republican Party and leadership, just don't care. As long as they're vote in enough R's, they get R's elected, they're fine, but R's go join D's when they govern, and they won't include conservatives in that big tent. And so we can try, and we did, but they're not interested unless we're going to do what they want. And that's the problem, Mike. When you had a legislator that's no longer with us talking on the floor, that legislator was tired of, it's my way or the highway. Well, that legislator was talking about their position. They want it their way or nothing. So it's very difficult to negotiate that way because I'm giving up everything on principle to do that. And there's only so far you can give up on principle before you're sold your soul. And the one thing I'm not willing to do, Mike, is sell my soul. I want to represent my district. I want to make sure we get a fair shake of the capital budget that we desperately need because we're the growing parts. You live up here, you drive on the roads in the mat suit. But when I go back to things like that capital budget, and I see Southeast Alaska, which has 2 senators and very little roads. I'm driving on one right now into work. And they got $31.1 million between the two of them. The Matsu, Mike, a total of $5.8 million with 3 senators and the growing part of the state that's many times the size of Southeast Alaska. And yet we got 18% of the state UGF dollars compared to Southeast Alaska and those 2 senators.
Yeah.
So you talk about fair and equitable, Mike. How am I supposed to deal with that? And work with a group that does that to us?
It's fair and equitable when I say it's fair and equitable. That's what it turns out to be. Mike Shower, State Senator, District O, thanks so much for coming on board. We'll give you a final bite here in a second. Folks, we're out of time. Tomorrow is another day. Be kind, love one another, live well. We will see you tomorrow. Have a good day. Okay. First and foremost, get yourself a new set of earbuds. Second of all, let me let you finish up.
What's going on with these things?
I don't know, but they ain't working right. Let's.
Well, it's I am driving in, so maybe it just doesn't like the background noise, but I don't know how to handle that. So
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. Let's. I'll give you the final bite here. Final bite at the apple, my friend. What final thoughts for folks here for this week?
Are you going to pull a dining caucus on me? I'm going to get a final bite, and then you're going to tell me I'm wrong and change everything at the end anyways? Is that what you're going to do to me?
Yes, exactly. I always get the final word. Always get the final word.
Yeah, radio host, just hit the mute button and shut them up. You can do what you want. Good for you. Block them. I don't know, Mike. We got the judge's ruling, capital budget, the operating budget. We didn't even get to that. That felt like 60 seconds for the program this morning. We'll see over the next few weeks how this operating budget can be. Oh, I did want to throw that out, that it's going to be the PFD. One of the finance co-chairs was already saying, $1,300. Naresh called it, my staff.
Yeah,
he
already said
like $1,300.
He said that at a press conference. Stedman said the PFD is going to be $1,300. Love it or leave it.
See how it is? There's no good. This is what I'm telling you, Mike, about the Biden caucus and how they do business. There's no we'll negotiate. We'll find it. It's going to be. Language matters. Oh, it's going to be what we say it's going to be, or else. That's how certain members play the game. So the House Finance found money to balance the budget and have a $2,200 PFD using multiple fund sources. What's the Senate do? Nope. They want more of that money to play with, to sprinkle around, to get what they want, to give themselves a bigger capital budget while other parts of the state get nothing. That's how the game is played here, Mike. So that's what you got to understand. That's what we're up against. And so we'll see. But this operating budget's going to be fascinating on it because it's going to be a chopped PFD. And we could right now, with what we have left, you could probably do, $650 million per thousand. And there's about $1 billion to play with. So you could probably do about a $1,700 PFD at least at this point, and you'd still be a balanced budget. But what does that mean when they're saying $1,300? It means they want some money left over to play with. They want some money left over to hand out to certain people to make sure they get the votes they need to pass it. That's exactly what they've done in the past. I'm not even making an accusation here, Mike. That's just how they do business. I've watched it for 7 years.
Right.
So they're going to leave themselves some headroom to play with, as opposed to giving that money, as I've told you before, to the private sector, the private citizens that could use the help, to our private sector that is struggling. Instead of putting the money there, they're going to filter it through government hands to government, for government. This is the opposite of it. This is a government of the government, by the government, for the government, as opposed to the people. I'm telling you, Mike, that's how exactly. Just watch.
Well,
watch the last for a couple of weeks and see how it goes.
Yeah, and Chris makes a valid point on Twitch. Chris says it's why you don't surrender the veto. The veto is the tool of negotiation, but the governor's got to be willing to use it. And he's not always shown himself to be willing to use it when it's needed. And you're right, Chris. That is the tool of negotiation. I hope he is more strident than he's been in the past. That's all I can say at this point.
What's the governor have to lose, Mike? Nobody's going to waste money on a recall effort in the last 2 years. He's got 2 more years. He can't run for re-election. Mike has no reason to not swing the hammer as hard as he needs to try to work and get what he thinks is best.
Yep, absolutely.
Period. I don't see why he wouldn't.
All right. Mike Shower, thank you, my friend. It's good to talk with you. We will talk with you again next week. Thank you for coming on board. See ya. Get a new pair of buds. That's all I'm saying. All right, folks, out of time. Got to go. We will return with more tomorrow. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.